Three matches, two wins, one draw, and a couple of red cards. Hi, I'm Wayne, and welcome to Goals by the Numbers. Let's just get straight into it. So, another week of matches in the Premier League, and our first one to discuss Manchester United and their 2-1 victory over Chelsea at Old Trafford. Chelsea went Chelsea last won at Old Trafford in the 2012-2013 season when Rafa Benitez was their manager. And the only goal of the game was scored by Juan Mata, who was soon to actually join Manchester United that season or the season afterwards. Anyway, match began in what could only be described as a rain-soaked Old Trafford. Watching the match, it looked as if someone decided to turn the tap on and just let it rain. Manchester United, despite the bad weather, actually started really aggressively, really keen, really determined. And admittedly, I would have said Chelsea would have gone into the game as arguably favourites. They seemed in a better place. They've had good results. They're in the Champions League, and in the last match played well against Bayern Munich. But just goes to show that when the Manchester United players do put the, we're going to say effort for want of a better word, when they actually go at another team, effort, the crowd got behind them, and that helped build momentum. And it wasn't very long before cross came in, a header came in across the box. Bruno Fernandes was able to poke the ball home, and after the VAR check, that was it. Manchester United went 1-0 up. So, okay, things are going well. Following that, Brian Mbeumo ran clear after a flick on from Sesko, and Sanchez, the Chelsea goalkeeper, I'm not quite sure what happened. Rush of blood to the head, came charging out, took out Mbeumo, and it was a red card. So at this point, you're thinking, at home, one extra player already scored a goal. This should be pretty straightforward. And then Casemiro got booked for a tackle, then scored, but Manchester United 2-0 up, then got sent off for a second yellow card, which arguably, I would argue it wasn't even a yellow card. He was tussling with a player, wrapped a leg around and won the ball. I get it. I can understand why some refs would give it. I can understand why the Chelsea fans would be happy for the red card. I mean, of course, right? Why not even at the amount of players? But yeah, I don't think that was a red card. But I digress. So that meant that at halftime, Manchester United made a few changes, being Ugarte coming on for Sesko, which then meant that Manchester United had almost like a 3-5-1 formation. Yeah, or a 3-5 or 3-4-1, 3-4-2 formation. But there was no real outball, which meant that Chelsea were able to just play and increase the pressure on the Man United defence, and eventually got their goal, which they did deserve, because in the second half, Manchester United just didn't really come at them to try and win the game and end it as a contest. So the Manchester United fans will be happy. Chelsea, I think, will be slightly disappointed. They could argue that going away to a team like Manchester United is always going to be tricky, and the fact that they haven't won there for what must be 11 matches now, kind of gives a bit of a reason as to why they didn't win, because it's just form, right? They haven't won there for a while, so that continued. Okay, so we move on. Amram will be really pleased because it helps alleviate some of the pressure that was and has been building on him. After the match against Manchester City in the last round of fixtures, he would have been keen, as would the players, to have made an effort to show that, they are trying to win matches, as Chelsea do. And yeah, good result for him, good result for the club. Fans are happy, content, or as happy and content as they can be. And Bruno Fernandes was being the first scorer, scored from the midfield position that for him is becoming much derided. Doesn't mean it's a good position. Time will tell, as will the numbers and the stats. And speaking of stats, as we are now 5 games in, or 5 matches in, we're now at the stage where we can look at some numbers and draw small conclusions from a small data set. So, for example, 5 games in terms of XG, Manchester United have 9.7 and lead the whole league. And you'd watch their matches and think, really? But the numbers don't lie. Following Manchester United is Manchester City with 9.3. And after them, I was surprised to see, well, something not like they shouldn't or they couldn't, but you'd expect maybe like a Liverpool because they're top of the league and scoring goals. But it was Crystal Palace with 8.3 as an XG. In terms of actual goals, we have Liverpool who are on 11. Surprise, surprise. Then they are closely followed by Chelsea, Arsenal, and Tottenham, who all have 10 actual goals. Manchester City are on 9 actual goals, so they are essentially meeting their XG. I mean, they're 0.3 down, 1 goal in the next match, and that completely goes. 1 goal likely from Haaland, who is on, I think 4 or 5 now. So he's definitely winding up to have a good season. In terms of progressive carries and progressive passes, so essentially the ball going forward 10 yards by either dribble or pass, Liverpool lead both stats, with surprisingly Aston Villa also having the same amount of progressive passes, but they're down in 18th, 19th. So just goes to show sometimes the stats paint one picture and the eye test and the league can show you something else. So speaking of Liverpool, that nicely takes us on to our next match, which is Liverpool versus Everton. Everton in their shiny brand new stadium. Since the Premier League started, in terms of matches at Anfield, Liverpool have only lost to Everton 3 times at home. The last time Everton won at Anfield was in the 99-2000 season. That was 1-0. And in this match, there was only ever one winner. Yes, it was a derby. Yes, it was a decent game. The first goal that was scored by Gravenberch. In this first image, you'll notice Salah on the ball, Gravenberch making a run towards the box, and Idris Gane pointing towards the box, maybe as if to indicate to one of the centre-backs a man is running in, he needs to be picked up. But each centre-back has their own man, so I'm not quite sure what was happening here. There seem to be 3 Everton players near Mohamed Salah. I believe that's more circumstance than an attempt to actually gang up on him to prevent him passing the ball. But once the ball does come in towards Gravenberch, who's running into the box, you see he's now broken into the box. The 2 Liverpool centre-backs are trying to figure out who's going to close him down as Tarkowski goes across. But Gane has completely lost Gravenberch, who he probably should have picked up at this point. And as the ball comes in, bounces, he hits a half volley and loops into the back of the net. Liverpool go 1-0 up. Happy days. But in this next image, which is admittedly grainy, you'll notice Salah out on the right. And you can see how much space Gravenberch has. I mean, who was supposed to be picking him up? There is 2 players with their back to him, and then 1 player who can see him, and he just runs completely free. So I guess that will go down as a defensive lapse for Liverpool. Or rather, against Everton. Hugo Ekitike, who, as every week goes by, is starting to look more and more like a good signing. I thought he was a good signing when Liverpool bought him. In fact, I can vaguely remember reading an article and someone was saying he's actually a Manchester United fan, which would actually be hilarious if that is actually true. But I digress. As every week goes by, and the fact that he scored the second goal, he just seems to look like a really good purchase, which makes me think to myself, yes, 2 main strikers, absolutely great. But was Isak brought to be the main guy and Ekitike brought to be the backup? And the backup is, so far, 5 games, small data set, and the backup is this good? Liverpool are already 5 points clear of Arsenal. Arsenal, who so far in terms of goals have a very miserly defence, only conceding two. I think if we have another 5 games and that gap doesn't close, are we just going to decide that Liverpool won the league and it's going to become a bit of a procession? They beat Arsenal at home, so if you would imagine playing Arsenal away, that would be tricky for them. Playing Manchester City away, that would be tricky for them, and potentially Chelsea, that would be tricky for them. So that would be 9 points dropped, assuming they lost. They're already 5 clear. If they can get another 4, it might just be a case of this is done. But with that in mind, there are also other points I should make on this. So yes, 5 wins from 5. Great for Liverpool. Fans will be happy. Owners will be happy. Managers will be happy. But there is a scenario where it could have been different. Not massively different, but different. So Liverpool scored very late winners against Newcastle and Burnley. So if those two matches ended as draws as they could have, well, of course, could have drawn, could have lost, but they actually won. That's actual fact. Drawing against Newcastle and Burnley, both away games, would have been 4 points less, which would put them a point ahead of Arsenal. Speaking of Arsenal, the winner against Arsenal came in the 80th-ish minute. Goal by Szoboszlai, who played right back. Really great goal. That was the deciding factor. Outside of the fact that Liverpool played well, dominated the game arguably, Arsenal were good, good defence. That would be 2 more points dropped. So, getting wins, whilst not playing great, technically, I believe watching Liverpool, they could actually play better. I don't think they're actually in top gear yet. I think maybe they're in second going into third. And I do think this one of the key signs or metrics of a team who can win the league is not playing great but still getting the results, or being effective or efficient with their results. Salah hasn't really kicked off and started scoring goals for fun yet. Ekitike is doing quite well in that respect. But I'd imagine if Salah gets like 15 goals and assists, say 10 goals, 5 assists, and Liverpool actually really start to pick up in terms of form, it could get quite interesting. Are they just going to bully all of the teams for the rest of the season? In 2 games' time, they play Manchester United, I believe at Anfield, and they're going to be really up for that. I think that'd be a really interesting match. I expect Liverpool to play well, dominate the ball in terms of possession, have a plethora of shots. But are Manchester United going to turn up and raise their game because it's Liverpool? Or are we going to have a rollover, show your belly and lose 7-0 kind of game? Who knows? But yeah, Liverpool are going to be interesting to watch this season. If this kind of form continues, where they're not playing great but still getting wins and results, what does that mean in terms of Europe? Are they then going to think, actually, you know what? We can carry on this form. Maybe we can win something really big. Time will tell. That takes us on to our last match, which was or is Arsenal playing Manchester City and getting a 1-1 draw at home at Etihad. So, Haaland scored an early goal after a through ball by Reinders, and he poked the ball past David Raya with a left-footed shot. Good goal. Haaland's been in decent goal-scoring form so far this season. Arsenal then decided they simply weren't going to take it lying down and started to attack. And when Arsenal actually did score the equalising goal, where Eze had lofted the ball seemingly over the entire Manchester City team, Martinelli ran through and lofted the ball over Donnarumma into the back of the net. Cue wild celebrations. Watching that goal be played back, it almost looked as if as if City were playing with a back five. And looking at the stats, I think in that match against Arsenal, that was the lowest possession a Pep Guardiola team has had in the Premier League. It was as low as 38%. 38% possession against Arsenal, who were at home, is no embarrassment or shame. But for a manager who prides himself on so much possession, it's his thing. That can't have been good. To go that defensive and try and actually grind out a result, that's not very Pep-like at all. But maybe things have changed. His team seems to be a bit younger, a bit more, dare I say, up and coming. Good signings made in the summer, like Ait Nouri, but we'll have to see how they develop over the course of the season. Yeah. So, questions, comments, concerns down below. What do we think? Have Liverpool already won the league? Is it already done and dusted? Is Ruben Amorim going to make the end of the calendar year after having to play Liverpool in a couple of weeks? Is Pep Guardiola going to manage to get his Manchester City side not just into top four, but actually be able to challenge Liverpool? Or is something else underfoot? And Chelsea, where does their season go from here? Arguably, they should have beat Manchester United, or they could have beat Manchester United, but they didn't. Is this just a blip, or I mean, it is a blip? But the question is: it just a blip, or potentially something bigger? I'll catch you in next week's video. Enjoy the rest of your day.